Now let's turn to the Economic Roundtable, and Treasurer Jim Chalmers opened today's productivity section of the agenda by talking about some of the key points that were in that leaked Treasury brief.
They identified 4 reasons why we don't have the productivity we need in our economy yet. Firstly, it's not dynamic or innovative enough. Secondly, we haven't got that capital deepening that we talked about in some detail yesterday. Thirdly, we're not doing as good a job as we can matching skills with opportunities. Again, a big focus of yesterday. But also our changing industrial base and particularly the growth in services has made productivity gains harder to measure, but also harder to find.
For analysis, joining me now is AMP Chief Economist Shane Oliver. Shane, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
One of the main takeaways from today's meeting is reform of the superannuation fund performance test. Now, the ACTU put this on the table yesterday. They said the current model acts as a disincentive to super funds from investing in housing and green energy. Now, the Treasurer told the Roundtable he'll consider adjusting the superannuation test in order to drive more investment in housing and net zero. Shane, can you explain exactly what this reform would be? And also, do you think it has merit? Do you think that's what we need? More super funds investing in net zero? Will that drive productivity?
Well, not on its own. I think there is an issue with the performance test, which was introduced 4 years ago to weed out underperforming super funds and also help lower fees. So in that sense, it's been good. But it also has the effect of I guess, herding superannuation funds together to adopt the same strategies so they don't take any risks. In other words, risk failing the performance test. If you can relax that a little bit, then you can encourage super funds to invest more in investments that may take longer to bear fruit. I don't just mean clean energy or housing. I'd also refer to private equity, startup companies and so on. That's where I think the Treasurer there referred to the Treasury statement about a lack of innovation and dynamism in the Australian economy. If super funds can be encouraged or given the flexibility to invest more in startup venture capital sort of stuff, then I think that would also go some way to help boost productivity. But of course, it's not the main game, but it's certainly one big factor in this puzzle.
Well, looking at the main game, what do you think is the best idea to come out of this roundtable so far, or out of the first 2 days?
Well, so far I'd have to say it's around regulation, streamlining it. That I think was the focus today. That's an area where we've had a major problem over the last few years. I sort of agree with the Productivity Commissioner, and I've long thought this, that in Australia we seem to have this mentality that whenever a problem is identified, we think, well, how can government fix that with regulation? Or how can government fix that with more government spending? And that's been the track that we've been on for many years now, and we're paying the price for that. So if we can get rid of a lot of that regulation, the classic example, of course, is that it now takes 50% longer to build a home, whether it's a unit or a standalone house, than it did 10 years ago. That's a national disgrace. Yes, we need good regulation there, but not to the point that it makes our housing crisis even worse than it is.
Yeah, indeed, and approval processes seem to take even longer, as you were just talking about. Now, you just mentioned government spending. Well, there was a rival roundtable today, which was organised by Matt Canavan. Ross Greenwood was hosting it. We broadcast it here on Sky News. And I just want to play you a comment that the former Productivity Commission Chair Gary Banks made about spending at Matt Canavan's rival roundtable. Have a look.
And the government's productivity agenda is mainly a spending agenda, and indeed you could say a spending more agenda.
So, Shane, does government spending need to be addressed, as Gary Banks says?
Oh, look, it certainly does. It's gone out of control in recent years. We had that surge through the pandemic. That was a special situation. It then comes back under control, and over the last few years it's blown out again, to the point that federal government spending is sort of running around or heading towards around 27% of GDP, well up from its pre-COVID average, which was below 25%. Likewise, when you look at total federal, state and local government spending, it's also surged by around 4 or 5 percentage points of GDP. So in other words, the public sector is taking up more of the resources in the economy, whether that's capital or labour. And of course, that crowds out private sector activity. And we know that private sector activity is more productive in growing our living standards than public sector activity is. So it is part of the issue here. And I'm a little bit surprised that it hasn't got as much coverage. Or hopefully it will maybe in the next day. But if we want to get our budget deficit under control on a sustained basis, and if we want to boost productivity on a sustained basis, we need to get the government out of the way, wind back government spending. Yes, there's priority areas, but if we're going to spend on those things, like more on defence or aged care and so on, we have to find other areas where we need to wind back that spending. So I totally agree with Gary Banks on this.
Look, I'll be very surprised if it is on the agenda tomorrow. I don't think the government wants to talk about cutting its own programs. It just likes to find other things to spend money on, it seems.
That's right.
Shane, really appreciate your time. Thank you.